Gurun Vaishnavanshan.
Hare Krishna, my name is Lavangala Tikya and we're reading from Bhagavad-gita as it is. We are in the introduction. I very much like to read the introduction because it puts us in the right mood, in the right frame of mind to enter into Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita is one of the world's foremost classics, especially within the realm of spiritual literature. And there are many ways to read Bhagavad-gita, all of them good. But especially if we want to gain the full benefit, we want to read it in the way that Krishna intended for us to read it, and with a little help from Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has done this translation and commentary that we are reading from. I find it very helpful. Yes. Bhagavad Gita is concerning 5 subject matters. Ishvara, which is Sanskrit for the Lord, God. Jiva, which means us, the living entities. Prakriti, Krishna's energy, mostly everything we see around us. Kala, time, the great force of time. And karma, activities and the reaction of such. Yes, I'm reading. The Supreme Conscious Ishvara is similar to the living entity in this way. Both the consciousness of the Lord sorry. Both the consciousness of the Lord and that of the living entity are transcendental. It is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter. That is a mistaken idea. The theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in the Bhagavad-gita. Consciousness may be pervertedly reflected by the covering of material circumstances, just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be a certain color, but the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. Lord Krishna says, Maya Jakshena Prakriti. When he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. If he were so affected, he would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters as he does in the Bhagavad-gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from material contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Our consciousness at the present moment, however, is materially contaminated. The Bhagavad-gita teaches that we have to purify this materially contaminated consciousness. In pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of Ishvara, and that will make us happy. Yes, this is interesting. One thing we can all agree on is that happiness is a good thing. We all like to be happy. And we are trying in different ways to reach this goal. Basically, everything we do is directly or indirectly aimed at happiness. Yes, I was speaking on the Bhagavad-gita and I received a question that said, oh, this seems to be a very self-centered thing. You are just doing this so that you can be happy. What about everybody else? Which, in a sense, is a good question. But actually, if we don't know what gives happiness to the individual, then we are not really fit to help anyone else either, because we won't know for their sake either what is the best thing. So certainly there are many good things you can do for people. We feed them and we clothe them and we try to create a social structure that works in such a way that we can live peacefully in it. And that works up to a point. But after that point, we all can agree to certain facts in life, such as disease, old age and death. And birth also. It is quite a painful situation. So consciousness is the thing that separates us from matters, and that is similar to Krishna, to God. So that is our nature, the conscious living entity. And when we are in this world, we are touched by matter. Matter becomes like a filter, like Prabhupada says here. We look at light, but if we look through a colored glass, then everything looks very red or blue or something like that. So when we're in this world, we are looking through this body, and what we see becomes filtered through this particular set of senses. In our eternal nature, we are not at all touched by matter, but now we are. And in our eternal nature, we are, in and of ourselves, we are Satchitananda, eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. And that nature is to be connected to Krishna. Yes. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or the Lord. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point our consciousness is contaminated. Yes, so this may sound a little bit harsh, and we may react in a defensive sense. There's nothing wrong with me. What do you mean contaminated? It sounds... it's a strong word, contaminated. We're thinking about nuclear catastrophes. But what it means is that the pure consciousness of the soul is now tinged by something else, is now covered by something else. And therefore we cannot see things as they are, we cannot see ourselves as we are, and therefore we need a little help. So Bhagavad-gita contains both instructions about what actually constitutes the nature of our pure self, of our pure consciousness, and it also contains instructions on a method how to develop that consciousness, to raise it back up again, because it is a natural, it is within us, but right now we are covered by this material body that we are that we are presently in. When we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conception cannot understand his situation. Bhagavad-gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life, and Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist. Yes, so we started by hearing how it's a quite common conception that consciousness appears at a certain level of combination of material elements. This is a very prevalent idea, that there was some kind of beginning and there was some kind of a soup-like existence where particles of matter were floating freely, but when they gained a certain level of sophistication, then consciousness could appear. And there is really no basis for this theory, because it is very, very difficult to go back as a scientist and study the beginning of the universe, how things happened and why they happened. And it is very difficult to understand what is the cause and effect. We can observe that organisms of a certain level of complexity exhibit a higher level of consciousness, but we cannot easily discern what is cause and effect. So the Bhagavad-gita starts off from the platform of the spirit soul. We are spirit soul, we have consciousness. Now we enter this material world and our consciousness is covered. So if we are in the body of a tree, our consciousness is very covered. If we are in the body of a dog, there's a little more awareness of the surroundings, of the personality. the individuality. And as a human being, we can very well develop quite advanced levels of intellect and spirituality and so on. So that's where we are now. We are human beings. And there are still higher levels to achieve from consciousness. We want to, realize our full potential as living entities, as conscious living beings. So that's why we want to accept the suggestion from Bhagavad-gita that no, we do not come out of matter and suddenly develop consciousness. The other way around. We are eternally conscious living entities, and when we come to this world, our conception, our understanding, our consciousness becomes limited as it is filtered through one specific body or another. Yes, one must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist. Yes, transcendentalists means those who aim at something higher than this material existence. But they are of different kinds. We will hear a little more, I'm sure. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also, the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hitvan yatharupang svarupenya vyavasthiti. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. All the instructions of Bhagavad-gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness. And therefore we find at the last stage of the Gita's instruction that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. Yes. So the reason that we come to this, rather concise and practical conclusion, pure consciousness means accepting the instructions of the Lord. It is not that that God has any particular interest in ordering us around. It is more that we do have an original relationship to Him, with Him. And when we turn our back on that out of curiosity or envy or so many reasons, we come to an existence where He is hidden, where we forget Him. But actually our real true nature is to be a person in a relationship with God. And to come back to that, we need to follow Krishna's instructions. And when we are living in that consciousness, at one point there are instructions, but at a higher level there is a natural loving relationship. It is said that a servant, the third-class servant, he will grudgingly do what he's asked to do. The second-class servant, he will follow the instructions as he receives them. The first-class servant, he will understand what the Lord wants and needs and desires, and he will spontaneously act. He will not need an instruction, because that is already part of who he is. But most of us, it's not part of who we are. So in this word, people are looking for mukti, because mukti means liberation, means freedom from suffering, means freedom from entanglement in this material world. But full and complete mukti means to become situated on that platform of our eternal, actual, real nature. Because unless we have that situation, it will not become a steady platform. It will not become. We will not become ourselves, who we are and who we can remain to stay as, in a very satisfied and complete way. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual soul. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang